test. Good morning and welcome to the board meeting of Friday, May 27, 2022. We will begin with the land acknowledgement. We acknowledge the lands which constitute the present-day region of Peel as being part of the treaty and traditional territory of Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation, the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, the Huron, Wendat, and Wyandot nations. We recognize these peoples and their ancestors as peoples who inhabited these lands since time immemorial. The region of Peel is home to many global indigenous peoples. We are streaming the public portion of this meeting live on our YouTube channel. If we happen to experience any technical difficulties with the live stream, please be advised that this meeting is being recorded and will be posted on YouTube. Next we have is the Section 10 Caledon OPP. We will begin today with Section 10 Caledon OPP meeting. Welcome Acting Inspector Sanderson. We will now refer to OPP Caledon agenda. Roll call, all members present. Is there any declaration of conflict? Seeing, hearing none. And just to Vice Chair Atia is not here today in the meeting, and we have Deputy Mayor Medeiros joined us through WebEx, and rest of the members are here physically present. The first item we will have the approval of the minutes from the meeting held Friday, February 25th, 2022. Any question, comment? May I have a mover? Moved by Regional Chair Unica, seconded by Mayor Crombie. All in favor? This is carried unanimously. And the second item is the Caledon OPP first quarter report, and Acting Inspector Sanderson, please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And if I might, just by way of introductions, since this is our, I believe, first in-person meeting in some time.
Sure.
I just wanted to introduce myself to the board. So for those of you who do not know me, my name is Marcus Sanderson. I'm currently the Acting Inspector and Interim Detachment Commander at the Caledon Detachment. As some of you may be aware, Inspector Mike Grant has recently retired from 30 years of service with the OPP and to the residents of the province of Ontario, and for the last and a good significant portion of his time to the residents of the town of Caledon. So I want to acknowledge his departure and let you know that the organization is currently undertaking a process to identify a new and permanent commander for the Caledon Detachment. It is anticipated that will take a number of months, but I suspect that there will be a permanent commander identified by the fall of this year. That may be myself, or it may be someone else from within the organization. In the meantime, however, I will be thoroughly engaged as the commander of the Caledon Detachment, and should the board have any inquiries or any issues, I would be your point of contact moving forward. So with that said, I will move into the report that is filed before the board. So rather than going through the report line by line, I will like to just identify some of the challenges that we've had in the first quarter. First and foremost, one of the challenges that we've had to address is staffing pressures. These are both internal and external pressures. We have a number of members who are on leave at the moment for various reasons. We have a number of members that are assigned on developmental opportunities, both within our detachment and throughout the broader organization. And from an operational perspective, the detachment, the OPP, and many police services within the province have been under significant pressure to meet some of the dynamic situations that evolved in the first quarter of this year throughout the province, namely some of the protest activity that we saw at the various border locations throughout the province, and as well as in the national capital in Ottawa. Caledon OPP was engaged heavily in providing resources for those deployments, and as a result, it has had an impact on our first quarter numbers in terms of our proactive enforcement activity, which you may see reflected in the numbers from the first quarter report. In addition to that, we have seen as members of the community move back to in-person work, increased traffic on our roadways. That has resulted in a corresponding increased number of collisions that we're seeing on our local roadways. We are working diligently to address that through focused enforcement and analytical analysis in order to focus our efforts to address the most serious areas. Continue to work with our municipal policing partners and Peel Regional Police and other agencies to move forward with targeted enforcement activities as we move into the summer driving months. Most specifically, the OPP and Caledon will be working with our municipal enforcement agencies on projects such as Project Erase, which is directed at addressing street racing issues, as well as Project Noisemaker. And we will be conducting in the near future one of two of our local annual commercial vehicle enforcement blitzes within the town of Caledon. So those plans are moving forward to address those areas, and through those activities and our directed enforcement, we hope to address some of the collision rates that we're seeing on our roadways right now. Moving forward to our property crime statistics, you'll see that we have had an increase in property crimes. Most specifically, one of the areas that we're experiencing challenges right now are thefts of vehicles. I think that we've seen through the media that this is something that is happening not only within the town of Caledon, but in other surrounding jurisdictions. Caledon is not immune. We've had a significant uptick in thefts of vehicles from residential driveways and commercial properties. We've had some success in making arrests in relation to these. Most recently, the arrest of 6 individuals who were acting as a concerted group to target vehicles within the Caledon area. But these types of activities are multi-jurisdictional in nature. That investigation continues. It is interprovincial. It is interagency in terms of our involvement with the surrounding municipal police agencies, Peel Regional Police being one of them, York and Toronto Police Service as well, to try and sort of peel away at these organized groups that are engaged in this activity. But these are lengthy and complex investigations, and successes come incrementally and over a period of time. So we recognize that this is a challenge. We are trying to get the messaging out to our residents through our crime prevention programs to help them target harden their property. But I see this as being a continuing challenge moving forward, at least in the near to medium term. I think that's specifically the issues that I wanted to bring forward to the board that I think are the most live and relevant issues that we're dealing with right now. And subject to any specific questions on the report that you have before you, I will leave it at that.
Thank you, Acting Inspector Sanderson. Board member, any question or comment from you? Mr. Boughton? Yes, go ahead.
Thank you. Through you, Chair. How many staff are you down? You're saying you have staffing issues. What's the number?
So at present, we're allocated 103 uniform members at the detachment. Right now, we're carrying about 7 full-time vacancies that are waiting to be filled by the organization. We have 5 members that will be reporting to the Caledon detachment in September of this year. So we're pretty good in terms of our authorized allotment. What that doesn't take into account is officers that may be on leave for various reasons. That could be medical, it could be familial reasons. And at this point in time, that number stands at 9 members that are out of the detachment. So, close to 10% of our authorized strength
Okay.
right now.
So, and through your chair, I would assume that under Highway Traffic Act, charges laid, which are almost half over that period of time, that would be the first area that would be negatively affected with the shortage of staff. Would that be accurate?
It would be, sir. Fewer officers means that you have fewer officers to respond to the volume of calls. We respond like all police agencies in a hierarchical manner. We tier the response to the calls for service. And so if members are engaged in servicing those calls, they have less time to conduct proactive traffic enforcement activities. And so that's why we're seeing a decrease. You couple that with the fact that in the month of February, we had significant numbers of officers deployed for much of the month within the province. It's in other areas within the province, as well as scheduled training for members. All of those things work together to contribute, and that is why you see that decrease.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Boughton, and thank you, Acting Inspector Sanderson. I was going to ask actually the same question which you answered from Mr. Boughton. I recently met at a gas station on Mayfield and Airport where a new officer who just joined weeks or months back or so. I think by the end of the year, there will be a lot more new people moving in because I see the construction going up by McLaughlin and north of Mayfield. So is there something, I guess, if within this year, 1,000 people or 1,000 homes, 1,000 families, my apologies, are moving in. So obviously, is that something, the challenge with the staffing, or we have some time to time the recruitment plans? And
Yes, Mr. Chair. Yes, the organization does have a plan in place. They recently completed a provincial-wide service delivery model to evaluate staffing levels at all of the frontline detachments within the OPP. Caledon was included in that review. We are slated to get additional officers to our complement. The end result is we'll have 14 new officers assigned to us. But that implementation is contingent on a number of things, contingent upon funding being available from the provincial government, the ability to recruit members in a timely fashion, get them trained and deployed to the front lines. So while I anticipate that we will be getting new officers to meet the growth pressures that are coming and we're experiencing in Caledon, the time frame for that is not firmly established as of yet. I would anticipate that those additional officers will come to detachment probably over the next 5 years. And again, that's just based on the information I have thus far. I'm hoping that will be moved forward on the time frame, but I can't say for certain exactly, next year we're going to get this many officers, and next year, not at this point, am I in a position to provide that information.
thank you. Any other question, comment? Seeing, hearing none. May I have a mover to receive the report by Mr. Boughton? Do we have seconder? Seconded by Ms. Coley. All in favor? This is carried unanimously. This concludes the Section 10 Caledon OPP agenda. Thank you, Acting Inspector Sanderson, for taking the time to attend this board's meeting. We will now begin the Peel Police Services Board meeting of May 27, 2022. Roll call. As before, we have all members present except Vice Chair Atia. And is there any declaration of conflict of interest by any board member? Seeing, hearing none. Next, we would like to ask the chief for any updates. Chief, please proceed.
Thank you. Good morning, Chair, and through the Chair to the board members. We are pleased to have our team here. As you can see, some of us are wearing green fluorescent epaulets. I just want to recognize that May is Mental Health Awareness Month, and through an organization, a not-for-profit entity called Peel Beyond the Blue, we have encouraged many of our members in the organization to go buy epaulets. The funds go right through to supporting families for services. We know that 1 in 4 people provincially, nationally suffer from mental health, and law enforcement are deemed as some of the highest risk individuals. So that's why we have the green epaulets, if you're wondering. There are only 4 chapters of Peel Beyond the Blue. OPP Commissioner Tom Creek and is an advocate for it. Chief Jim Raymer in Toronto and Chief Brian McCullough in Niagara. We, of course, have a chapter here, so we're proud to support them with President Adrian Woolley and the PRPA. Just a couple of updates. First thing, before I pass it on to Deputy Milinovich and Acting Deputy McKenna, I just wanted to acknowledge that Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II and the Chancellery of the Governor General have an awards system here in Canada, and it is proctored through the Governor General. And on an annual basis, they identify a small number of officers that are to be awarded the honor of the Order of Merit of Police Forces in Canada. And I'm pleased to acknowledge that Deputy Chief Nick Milinovich and Deputy Chief Anthony O'Doherty, who's of course away, have been identified and received the Order of Merit of Police Officers. They will have, in a post-COVID environment, they typically would be at Rideau Hall to receive the award. But we just want to acknowledge and congratulate the 2 of them. We know that many of our members are acknowledged in different ways, but I just want to congratulate them. So with that, Nick, if I can turn it over to you for a quick operational update, and then to Acting Deputy McKenna.
Thank you, Chief, and through the Chair, good morning, Board. Very quickly, I want to provide a brief update into a homicide investigation that our team has been working on. This relates to a homicide that occurred in March of 2022. On March 1st at approximately 2:30 p.m., emergency services responded to a call for service for shots fired. Tragically, the victim was a 19-year-old male from Brampton, Jaleel McCoy. And I'm pleased to report that due to the tenacity and the commitment of our investigators, we have identified the person who we believe responsible for that and charged a 20-year-old man from Brampton with first-degree murder, that male being Tylin Singh from Brampton. And that concludes my update. Thank you, Chief.
Deputy, I'm wondering if you could, thank you for that update. I'm wondering if also we all know that in recency, I've been talking to many of the board members, Mayor Crombie, as well as it pertains to the recent attention brought to violent carjackings and robberies across the GTA. I just want to identify the fact that we have partnered with Toronto Police and York Police in a joint forces operation that we're equal partners with. I know it's getting some media attention in the media, and it may look Toronto-centric, but we're an equal partner. Can you comment quickly on that?
Absolutely. Thank you, Chief. And as was indicated earlier by the OPP, carjackings and car thefts are and continue to be an issue for our service. As we heard at the last Police Services Board meeting, we are doing a number of things to try to prevent them. But of course, when they do occur, we want to make sure that we're collaborating with our partners to identify the people responsible and hold them accountable. So we have engaged with our partners in Toronto, York, OPP, and are beginning to discuss opportunities where we can collaborate even further to make sure that we identify people who aren't confined by their jurisdictional boundaries and committing these crimes across the GTA.
Thank you, Nick. And before we move to the Acting Deputy, if there are any questions, please let us know. And absent that, I think, as you know, Sean's going to speak to you about as the summer months come in, and many of you have seen Inspector Peter Danos from our Road Safety Services come and address Mississauga Council, Brampton Council, as it pertains to road safety. Sean's got a couple of updates that would be of interest for you.
Thank you, Chief, and good morning, Board. As the Chief touched on, With the summer months comes an uptick in street racing. And this has become a serious community safety issue. In 2020, the first JFO with our partners at YRP, OPP, and TPS commenced. That was, as many of you will remember, the highly successful Project Drift. So here in 2022, it's the third iteration of that JFO that we'll be participating in, Project Buccaneer. And we'll be sending some resources down to commence that. You know, as we all know, street racing doesn't really know any boundaries like carjackings and many of the trends that we see across the GTA. So we'll be participating in that. And just to touch on that further, you know, we've commenced our localized efforts of a race and noisemaker. And just to give you an insight on some of the results that the JFO and our localized focus on these kinds of activities has resulted in, what we've seen is a 47% reduction in calls for service for stunt driving and racing related calls since 2020. So we're going to continue with that effort, and we anticipate that this will continue to make some dents into that particular community safety issue. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Sean. And
Thank you, Acting Deputy McKenna, and thank you, Chief. Board member, if any questions or announcement, I would just like to have one, and then I'll recently, just today in the media, we see, as you mentioned, that we are working jointly with Toronto and York regarding carjacking and the vehicle thefts. It's just the media reporter says they allocate approximately 2.3 million to assemble an organized crime investigation support team. If we are working jointly, is that we are also part of it, or this just Toronto and we have something separate?
Currently, this is just Toronto, Toronto-centric. Of course, we continue the conversations with them and look for opportunities to partner with them. Specific to carjackings, I want to reassure the board we are involved in a number of formal joint forces operations outside of some of the contemporary announcements that you're hearing about. But again, you know, if an opportunity presents itself for us to continue to assign resources in a space that's responsible and not redundant to what we are already doing, thankful to, you know, the leadership of the board, leadership from our chief, we moved early in this space. So we've already been committed in a number of these areas. And I'm confident that we are responsibly committed in a way that addresses the issues for us here in Peel, but also supportive of what's happening throughout the GTA.
I'll have Chief to comment, and then I'll open to the board members, as I see some of the board members like to ask some questions.
thank you. And just to top up Nick's comments, as you can see, other municipalities are putting resources into having a dedicated entity to invest these type of crimes where vehicles are being shipped overseas. Just as a reminder, and the board would be aware, Peel was one of the two agencies in Ontario to have a dedicated commercial auto crimes unit, us and York Police. And so, you know, our commitment to Nick's as early investors in this space has already been at the table, which is what allows us to partner with Toronto, York, and the OBP in a very thoughtful manner already. But we'll open it for any questions, Chair.
Thank you, Deputy, and thank you, Chief. Board members, any questions? I saw the hand earlier. Okay. Any question or comment, not on this matter, but overall, this is the area where the board members can have any questions, whether it's related to this subject we're talking or any other announcement or any other question. Regional Chair Unica, please.
Thank you, and thank you for that update. This is on another matter, but I want to thank the chief because he gave me the segue and the reminder as he was talking about mental health. So congratulations to all the officers that do what you do. But ironically and fortuitously, I mentioned to you before the concerns we have about post-traumatic stress, our frontline responders, et cetera. And so very proud of my council that we stepped up and said we would welcome a facility for all of Ontario and all of Canada for first responders to deal with PTSD. The chief will know we attended an event a couple of months ago with the Premier where the official site in Toronto through Moneymead Health Services was dedicated and a groundbreaking ceremony was done for the assessment center. I am very, very proud to tell you in the last month, I signed over the 25 acres of land on behalf of our council for that site to be domiciled in Peel, as we've discussed before, the only one of its kind in Ontario or Canada. And I'm especially proud to tell you, and Chief, you've reminded me that just yesterday we are having a discussion with regards to the zoning of the site to allow for this PTSD center for our first responders, fire, police, nurse, paramedics, et cetera, et cetera. So I couldn't be more excited. I have to commend the Premier because it was his impetus that said one way or another, Chair, this has got to be built. I have to thank my council colleagues for giving up what is, I think, 25 acres of land anywhere in Peel on a bad day is $2 million. So your council colleagues put up $50 million of land. And we did it the second we heard the initiative was available. And I've learned since that because we stepped up when nobody else did, we were the only ones in the running, so we won, so to speak. And that's all on behalf of our first responders. So Chief, further to your segue, thank you. I wanted to mention that. And now the hard work begins and we're going to be going to the community. I want to thank Mayor Thompson and Councillor Innes. It is in their jurisdiction. And we've got to reach out to the community to discuss the nature of what this property will look like and access and things like that. But thanks to a lot of people and how apropos we can discuss that today, Chief, given what you've told us about mental health, which is a huge issue. And we want to look after our front responders and all that you've been through. And so proud of my council to step up the way they did. So I just wanted to let everybody know and thank you for that.
Thank you, Regional Chair Unica. Any other announcement or question by any board member? Seeing, hearing none. Okay, so I'll move on to the item number 1 on the agenda. The first item is the approval of the minutes of the meeting held on Friday, April 29, 2022. No question or comment? May I have a mover and a seconder to approve these minutes? Moved by Al Boughton, seconded by Ms. Coley. All in favor? This is carried unanimously. There were no deputation received for today's meeting, so we will move on to the item number 3. Item 3.1, presentation, intimate partner violence. Chief, would you like to introduce the presenters?
Yes, I'll hand it over to Deputy Milinovich.
Thank you, Chief. And through the chair, I am incredibly excited to welcome a couple of people to provide this presentation. Sharon Main Devine, CEO of Catholic Family Services, and Acting Inspector Rebecca Miller-Small. You know, it's not often that we have an opportunity to deliver a joint presentation to the board. And, you know, this is something that I would like to highlight because what this represents is a collaboration. You've often heard the chief talk about the complexities of intimate partner violence and how important it is that our responses are not proprietary to police alone. Roughly a year and a half ago, our police service met adequacy standards, and it was largely a service model that was developed exclusively by our service. What you see before you are two people that represent a collaboration of multiple organizations. This is not exclusively a police service strategy any longer. And, you know, from my opinion, represents some of the gold standard in this space. And I would just like to publicly thank not only Sharon and Rebecca, but all of the different organizations that they represent here today as they provide this presentation. And with that, I'll pass it over to them. Thank you, Chief.
Thank you. It's just, there we go. Thank you for the reminder. It's an absolute privilege for me to be here today to jointly do this presentation. So, and I know I'm among friends. For those of you who don't know me though, my name, as Nick has said, is Sharon Main Devine, and I'm the CEO of Catholic Family Services Peel Dufferin. And we are the proud owners and operators of the Honorable William G. Davis Center for Families, 60 West in Brampton, which is the home for the Safe Center of Peel. And we have the privilege of being the lead agency for the Safe Center.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Rebecca. Before we start the presentation, I think it's important to note that Sharon and I are not only here on behalf of Peel Regional Police and Catholic Family Services, but we're here on behalf of all of our community partners that call the Safe Center home. And those community partners continue to grow on a daily basis. And you'll see that depicted in the next slide there with the community partners listed. Thank you.
Yes, we don't do anything alone. And I think one of the beauties of the Safe Center and many of our organizations being co-located in that space is that we build strong relationships with one another. Before we had the Safe Center of Peel, there were so many barriers for women to get the help and the support that they needed in any kind of a cohesive way. It was often frightening, daunting. Women often gave up, and women also often did not want to engage with police in order to be safe and have their pathway to safety. So, it was a very challenging time in this community, going back, 10, 11, 12, 15 years ago. Next slide. So we came together as a community over about 15 years ago to dream what could we do in our community to make it easier for women and their children to find pathways to safety. And we developed a vision for a community free of the impacts of violence, and our mission to strengthen our community by providing a single point of access to service that are coordinated, responsive, and accessible to those experiencing family and intimate partner violence. And, it's just tremendous, really, that we're here today to talk to you about our very, very successful collaboration. Your contributions, your support as a police services board has really led us to be a truly integrated center now that we have Peel Regional Police living with us at the Safe Center and at the Davis Center. And as I'm here with you, I'm just really reminded of about 12 or so years ago, we actually had the leaders of the Family Justice Center join us in Peel Region. Some of you may have even been at that meeting quite a number of years ago when we first conceived as a community of this integrated service system. So our model is based on the San Diego Family Justice model, and we actually have two of our colleagues who aren't here with us today because they're actually in San Diego right now attending the international conference on family justice centers. And I have it on good authority that we'll look forward to welcoming some of the leaders there to Peel again so that they can see what we've been able to do in the last 10 years. So there's a lot for us to celebrate in our 11th year. Next slide.
It became operational in April and 21, and it consisted of 40 detective constables and 8 detectives. Due to the large number of calls that were coming into the unit, we were unable to keep up with the calls and relied on our divisional staff members to assist us with taking those calls that we could not. In February 2022, the Chiefs Management Group approved an additional 16 officers to be assigned to the unit, increasing our complement. This assisted greatly because in the beginning, we were only able to take 64 to 74% of the calls, but now we're able to take 80 to 86% of the calls that are coming into the unit. And what makes our unit stand out most, besides being one of the largest IPV units in the country, is that we are one of the few that follow the Family Justice Center model. And our service delivery is assigned with PRP, the region, and the priorities of the Community Safety Wellbeing Plan. Our investigators have received specialized training in trauma-informed response, sexual assault investigations, intimate partner investigations, and have received specialized training in interviewing courses. We also take great pride that our unit is one of the most diverse units in our organization, and our officers speak 14 different languages. This allows us to ensure that the unit is reflective of the community that we serve. Next slide.
So I'm delighted to say that now we have a system in place that works completely together to ensure that women are able to get the support they need when they need it. Our staff at the Safe Center, our client navigators are doing risk assessments and safety planning. We also provide services in 14 different languages across our staff. We have child minding in place, which was one of the biggest obstacles for women getting the support they needed, as well as transportation, so that we can get women to the center to get the support and help they need. What's wonderful is that women just have to tell their story once, and with their permission, that information is shared with all the partners that they have to interface with to get the services that they need. And women need many, many different services in order to move towards safety for themselves and their children. They need housing support, family court support. We know that they require a specialized police response. And now that we have Peel Regional Police living with us at the Safe Center, women don't have to go to the police station, which is terrifying for them, and often wouldn't report because it was just far too intimidating. So now we have these soft interview rooms right in the Safe Center. So children can be in the child minding space, being kids, and women don't have to worry about them. And they can have the conversation with the officer that they need in order to ensure they're safe, and also, to engage with the perpetrators of violence. There are many, many other supports that women need, and all of those are also we're connected to with our offsite partners, and we network together so that the system works seamlessly together. Next slide.
So with the IPV unit being embedded at the Davis Center and a collaborative partner with the Safe Center of Peel, we're able to expand our service delivery from beyond just incident response and shift to risk intervention, prevention, and social development strategies to be in a better position to provide additional support to the survivors and an off-ramp to upstream services. Next slide, please. So although we have seen a decrease in the number of calls to the police, there has been a noticeable increase in the number of charges related to IPV. Looking at the total number of IPV charges from May to December 2020, there were 4,351 charges. In 2021, during that same time period, when we were operational with the IPV unit, there were 5,291 charges. Also, as indicated in the graph on the left, we see a concerning trend of increasing in the severity of the charges, including both assault, bodily harm, and assault with a weapon. And this also includes strangulation, which you see in the chart on the right. Strangulation is one of the most lethal forms of IPV, and studies have shown that the most dangerous offender strangle their victims. When looking at the strangulation statistics, there is a woman strangled every day in our community. This is a concern for our community as well as our community partners. Next slide.
I know you look at those numbers, and when I hear about the strangulations that happen every day, it's chilling, I think, for all of us. And I will say that with the phenomenal training of the IPV officers, they're really able to get at what's happening in a women's relationship extremely well. I don't think we're seeing more violence. I think what we're seeing is a greater capacity to be able to respond and move in and to help the women that we need to help in our community. And, I think I'm just so delighted by the success of the IPV unit. That has had implications, though, for us in the community. You can see that at one point, we were seeing 506 women at the Safe Center, and now we're 1,324 and anticipating that number to grow. Every time you add a new officer doing a superb job, we have more women who need to come to us at the Safe Center. Every time a woman interfaces with the unit, there's a referral made to the Safe Center. And that's a woman that we need to be able to respond to. Next slide. So while our success is tremendous, we lack sustainable resources for the community agencies to deliver essentially on the promise that we've made to the women and children in Peel region. You know, we've had some tremendous initiatives through the region of Peel. You know, we're doing annual social media campaign to inform the community and so forth. And, you know, our fear in doing so would be that we would be seeing more women. And in fact, we are, and more calls are being made. Next slide. So we have some critical needs. We have learned that some of the highest demand times when women need the community support is the after hours, dinner hour, middle of the night, and we only have funding for 9 to 5 services. So it's a huge gap for us right now in the community, and women are having to wait to the next day to be able to connect. Now, thankfully, I was able to get some funding for a 1-year pilot from the Canadian Women's Foundation for 2 people to help in that overnight time, which I can tell you is not nearly adequate enough. So I think what we're faced with is, as Peel Regional Police officers, you know, have increased that capacity, we have not seen a correlational increase on the community side. So really, you know, we've got our work cut out for us at the Safe Centre and as a partnership. One of the things that we know we need to do is we need to develop a sustainable funding model, because right now the model for the Safe Centre for the community is not a sustainable model. It's a patchwork of different funds, and every year I spend hours writing grants to get a 1-year pilot, a 2-year pilot, reallocating current funds. You know, and we've made some inroads to get some increased funding. And thanks to the region last year, we also had some emergency funds that got us through that year. But we really realized that we need to really develop a business case and a business plan and really develop that sustainable funding model. We also know that we need a Mississauga location. 50% of the women who come to us at the Safe Centre live in Mississauga, and that's quite a schlep up to Brampton. And even though we provide them with transportation, that's a barrier. We know how long it can take to get up to Brampton from Mississauga, especially during certain times of the day. So that becomes prohibitive as well. If you're a mom with small kids, you don't want to have to get in a cab and try to find your way up to Brampton from Mississauga. We also know that we need to have a better upstream response so that we can intervene earlier. And so we were successful in getting some funds to do a pilot project in one division to have an officer and a social worker go out together to be able to intervene and connect with women earlier, before there's actually an assault that has occurred. So we've got a couple of positions to do that, to begin to pilot it. I imagine it will be very successful, and if that's the case, then again, the community is faced with the challenge around being able to meet the promise. I think that we're making to the community by saying that we have this cohesive model. At this point, our capacity to meet the need is challenged, and women are having to sometimes wait before we can respond to them, which breaks my heart. And at this point, we're certainly responding to the women who, where they have the highest risk factors. But if we're going to intervene earlier so we don't get to the point of strangulation, then we need to be able to respond earlier. I've been doing violence against women work for my entire career, over 30 years. And I can tell you, violence doesn't start as strangulation. It starts with, where are you going? What did you spend that money on? I didn't tell you that you could go out. It starts with, you know, you're a shit cook, excuse my language. And that it escalates time over time over time. It builds. So the earlier we can respond, the better and the more lives we'll save, but also the less cost it will be to our community in terms of court costs, mental health costs, impacts on children. Anyways, I can go on, and I know I'm probably way over the time allotted to this, so my apologies. I get pretty passionate, and you all know that, and you know me by now. We can do this together. I am so delighted to say here we are 15 years after we first conceived of this idea. I know that Inspector Hewison and Shalina, who's our director at the Safe Center, are celebrating in San Diego because they're there to say this is what we're doing in Peel. We're one of the only places in Canada that's doing this kind of work. And I just know that working together, not just Peel Regional Police and all the partners you saw, but working with Regional Council, working with the Police Services Board, that we can really show this province and this country what we can do and how we can do it. So I'm just really delighted to be here today. Next slide.
And that's the end of the presentation, but I want to take this time just to thank you all in this room for helping us make a difference in the lives of all the women and children in our community. Thank you very much.
Thank you for the presentation. We have Mayor Crombie on the line, please.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. And thank you, Sharon and Rebecca, for coming forward. I mean, these statistics are bone chilling, as you said, and really concerning for us in particular is the lack of sustainable long-term funding. Seems very patchwork, and I don't think that's the right approach. So I think we need to discuss here and discuss at the Region Appeal, Mr. Chair, how we help you come up with a solution for this, because it's just so inappropriate. And the gaps are mind-blowing, frankly, because it's not like a woman's going to report abuse 9 to 5. None of our jobs, chief, the team, no one's job is 9 to 5. It'd be nice if nothing happened on evenings and weekends, but the reality is, there we go. The reality is, I think that's where the bulk of your calls would come. With respect to the Mississauga location, I assume you've attempted to partner with Embrave or Arma House. And I know that both are in expansion mode. Would there be an opportunity to land an office or provide some servicing there on location?
Absolutely. So we've been in conversation, particularly with Arma House at this point in time. They've got a relatively new executive director there.
Yep.
So Janice is actually coming up to tour the Safe Center and the Davis Center in June. And wants to, they've just joined the Community Safety Wellbeing Plan table, the Family Violent Action table. And absolutely, there'll be conversations with them around the partnership and, what we can be doing around this work. And certainly, we also work really closely with Embrave. They're an important partner.
Yes.
For us in terms of, one of the biggest pressures we also have, if I can just highlight this, is around housing. So in that middle of the night time, trying to find a place for, women to go now has been very, very difficult, I think, in part to the pandemic. But, I think we all know that there's a housing crisis happening in Peel, and there's absolutely not enough housing. So there's pressures, I think, on all of us to be able to do that.
Where are these women and children referred to after you process them? They come for you for assistance. I assume you put them in touch with all the right partners for counseling, for whatever needs they have, and then refer them where?
So, so the way the system works is, they are, each woman's assigned a client navigator. So that way there, the client only needs to be in touch with one person, who then ensures that she gets appointments with whoever else she might need, whether that be a legal aid, lawyer. If it's housing, the navigator will work with the available partners. So sometimes we're having to send women out of region to Yellow Brick House in York. They're going up to Orangeville. They're going wherever we can find a bed in the middle of the night. Sometimes it's hotels. Hotels are not a good idea, especially if the perpetrator is still at large. Sure. And there's high levels. So, this is one of the areas I think that we're really working actively across all of our housing partners to see what we can do
And Peel
in
does
that.
provide emergency funding for those, some
Yeah.
of those situations as
Yes.
well, I would
Yeah.
assume. Gosh. On the page 6 on all your charts, the raw numbers reported intimate partner violence disputes seem to be declining, but that's not really the case. There seemed to be a peak in 2019. I wonder if you may tell us. And my concern is that numbers went down through COVID, but it was not being reported. But I expect that intimate partner violence incidents probably increased during COVID because of isolation and lockdown, et cetera. So they're not reflected in the numbers. So they're just not being reported then?
That's right. That's exactly what happened. So through the pandemic, we had to resort to texting for women when they were able to reach out, because, you know, if you're isolating in your family situation with the perpetrator, there's not a lot of opportunity for women to be able to reach out. It's very dangerous to reach out.
Of course.
So it
And
became
where are
very
you going?
difficult.
It's a big
Where
question.
and
Where
where
are
are
you
you
going?
going?
It's the lockdown.
And where are you going? And the fear that women would lose access to their children, especially if they have no adequate housing to go to. Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, so I think we all agree that it was just not being reported, but
Yeah,
incidents actually
absolutely.
increased. So,
Yeah.
you need that big footnote there, COVID.
That's a really helpful feedback. We absolutely should add that footnote.
Because it looks like, oh, things are improving, but they're clearly not.
No,
And
they were
probably the
not.
situation was much worse.
No.
So I don't know how you estimate what it could have been, but to show this to the uneducated eye may make it appear that things were
Mhm.
actually getting better, which is not the case. The whole issue of strangulation, I just find so gobsmacking shocking. Ugh.
Yeah.
To think that that level of physical violence against a loved one, wow. And that every day somebody is strangled. I guess that's really all I wanted to say, other than, the statistics, the absolute numbers look like there's an improved situation. So maybe try and address that. The long-term sustainable funding is really critical. So maybe we get our team, get assistance from Solicitor General's office, looking at Charles, or wherever. But, the fact that you're open 9 to 5 is so inadequate. I would rather you be open 5 to 5.
Exactly. Yeah.
5 p.m. to 5 a.m. I think that makes much more sense, other than you need to reach out to other agencies and maybe open 9 a.m.
Exactly.
And as we know, this is all very incremental. Women suffer abuse, and it may appear as that it's a one-off remark or a one-off situation, or he was just frustrated, or maybe consumed too much alcohol, and it's not really who he is, and that it just like incrementally increases, and before they know it, they're in an abusive situation and trapped, and they feel responsible for allowing it to go that far, not recognizing the signs and dealing with it sooner. But
Yeah.
just horrible. And I really thank you both for being such strong advocates and for being here to educate us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Crombie. We have Ms. Coley on the line, please.
Thank you, Mayor Crombie, and thank you, Chair. First of all, I want to recognize you and thank you for such a great presentation today. And I think, just like I said, for an uneducated eye today, you really helped put forth, what is happening, what's been done. I know in the short time, when I look at the numbers, obviously such a model works, right? And that's what we're seeing here. And I understand with the pandemic, probably the setback and what we could have done and what more we can do, did occur. But I think what we're seeing here is the opportunity. I think the biggest part that my takeaway was the education to a woman at the start, right? So we talk about strangulation, but I think what you made a really point is it's those comments that start is a recognition and understanding that this is a path, right? It will get to something much worse down the road. So I do want to recognize you for your work, and I hope that we are able to do something to help you to sustain such a model, because I think if nothing else, this shows we need it. We need a place for women to go. They feel safe to have a conversation. In such a multicultural community, it is dealt very differently, and how it's, awareness of it and understanding and what we can and what we're allowed to do in different cultures, and we think it's okay to do, is very it's very important that in such a community that we have that cultural sensitivity. And I love to see there was multicultural languages. There's an understanding. It's a safe place for all. So I want to recognize all the organizations that are coming together to do this, and I think anything we can do to help sustain this further. I think more than anything today taught us that we do need to keep doing this, and we need to have a place for women to go. So thank you to both of you.
Thank you, Ms. Coley. Any other question, comment? Sorry, Mr. Boughton, please go ahead.
Through you, Chair, Sharon, Rebecca, thank you so much for being here. And you know, obviously, I'm from a business background, and we always say, when you have money, you have options. If you have no money, you have no options. You can't do what you want to do. I think on the intimate partner violence, I've on your page, the third one on the top, victim services appeal was really a path that I was on, and I spent a number of years raising a lot of money for victim services appeal, and I did it because I just thought it was the right thing to do, and there was a lot of fun actually involved, and the members that I was involved with were great. And we had one woman who was on victim services appeal, and she was fantastic. We had a meeting on Thursday at my office, because we would go between Emerald Kolb and my office, which was in those days was right behind Emerald Kolb, and we'd have lunches and we'd have some fun together. And that meeting on Thursday, I was always sit with her because she was so much fun. On Sunday morning, her picture was on the front page of the Toronto Sun, and she had been killed by her husband, who was a police officer. And that was the day that it came to focus for me, that here was somebody who you would never know. You would never know on the fact that her husband was a copper and she was working hard. She was a terrific board member. It's when that type of incident happens in your own life that you really start to get it. And it increased my passion to help to raise money. And what you do is outstanding. And it goes to the, you know, not reporting at the little things. And you wondered what misery there may have been in her life up until he took her life. And you would have never suspected it. So the work that you do is terrific, and we, as a society, and we have to find a way to fund you to make the resources available for Peel Region and in every region across Canada, so that we can control this a little better. So thank you again for your great work. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Boughton. We have Chief next to speak on the line.
Thank you, through the chair. And first of all, Sharon and Rebecca, thank you so much, first of all, for being here and being so passionate. We know just a few months ago, we had an opportunity to be with Minister Jones for the announcement, and you so eloquently spoke there. And that's the voice that really everybody needs to hear, not necessarily us, but we want to recognize your willingness to continue to move forward. And Mayor Crombie, you know, we've chatted a little bit about the opportunity to find a publicly available location in Mississauga that would allow multiple human service partners to join us. I think, you know, we have an opportunity to look at the art of what's possible that's not done anywhere else in this country. There is a large amount of confluence of issues that are present when people not only experience intimate partner violence, but as Sharon so appropriately spoke to, is precarious housing, the vulnerabilities that come with a lot of issues. So, you know, we actually, you know, looked at the old OPP detachment in Port Credit, and Mr. Boughton, as you know, Victim Services Appeal is one of the partners, and we know you've got a Rolodex of people that are willing to support causes, but as we just continue to look for opportunities to service the rest of the region in a creative way, I think this is the model which, you know, Sharon, you know, you've been waiting for us to come alongside of you for a long time, that we are advocating for. It's not, it's a holistic approach to resolve these issues, and I think Peel's got a great opportunity to do that. And Sharon, we wouldn't be here without the leadership of you and the other entities there. So on behalf of all of us, we're thankful for having you as a partner.
Well, it's my pleasure, and thank you so much for having me today. It's an honor.
Thank you. If no further question, looking for move to receive the presentation by Mayor Crombie, seconded by Mr. Boughton. All in favor? This is carried unanimously. The next, we have the second presentation today, item number 3.2, Enterprise Project Update. Chief, would you like to introduce the presenters?
Sure, we're going to do the usual double introduction, but I need to preface it before I hand it over to Acting Deputy Raymore. And Tony, you're welcome to, are you going to present from there probably? I think perhaps the podium is probably better if possible. I just want to say yesterday, as you know, I had an opportunity to speak to your colleagues, board colleagues at the OAPSB conference. One of the issues they wanted us to speak to is what boards often see and, you know, and information reports, requests and recommendations for large commitments on the technology and innovation side. And I think we made an effort, as you recall, on the board offsite to have Tony come over a year ago to talk to you about the strategic foundation we're going to use as a lens for our investments. And we just heard Sharon speak about our approach to community safety well-being. And we just want to reiterate that our approach for innovation technology investments that you've allowed us to procure and jump in both feet is a vehicle for us to achieve that. And I just want to say that, you know, yesterday I spoke to other entities about body-worn cameras, mobile devices, digital evidence management, all these big ticket items that you continue to hear. But we're really pleased to have the leadership. I know Deputy O'Doherty's not here, but of Director Ventura and his team to help you you know, help dialogue where we are with these enterprise projects. So Heather, just I'll kick it to you. I probably said everything you were going to say probably again, but.
Thank you, Chief. And through the chair, good morning. And yes, you did, Chief. You've covered absolutely everything I have. So Tony Ventura, everybody, this should be a very interesting presentation and Tony delivers it well. So go ahead, Tony.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. And through the chair, I just want to preface this by saying I'm really delivering this on behalf of Deputy O'Doherty, who can't be here today. And this is, you know, State of the Union of what we're doing in IT. One of the things that I want to address, and I think one of the stigmas that attaches to IT professionals, is that it's often seen that we're doing technology for technology's sake. As technologists, we got into this field because we like tinkering with new software, new hardware, new solutions. And it's kind of that old Radio Shack thing. I'm probably dating myself, but tinkering around with that. And really, technology has to serve a business purpose. It has to serve something better. It has to have a business-focused outcome. And one of the things I hope that I will be able to deliver today is it's not technology for technology's sake. It's technology to solve real-world problems that we have today. So with that, I will start off. And there's a short video on the second slide, if I could just have it advance and play the video.
One of our vision statements is a safer community together. One of our aspirational statements is to be one of the most progressive and innovative police services in North America. I was hired here by Peel Regional Police as a deputy chief about a year and a half ago. And during my assessment phase, I understood that we were a little bit behind the times in terms of innovation and technology. Innovation does not necessarily include technology. However, technology really requires an innovative mind and thought. We had 180 priorities here when I came to this service, and we boiled them down to 25. We bucketed those priorities into themes. So let me give you an example of one, our digital officer transformation program. And that is to have a connected officer in the community with the technology they need and require to serve the community in real time.
A big part of that plan is for us to move forward and away from reactive policing more to proactive policing. Where we stand today as an organization, more than 80% of the 911 calls we attend are non-criminal in nature. They're due to either mental health and addiction, food insecurity, housing insecurity, any of these other socioeconomic issues.
So when we talk about responding to 80% of our calls are non-crime, why are we giving a crime map to an officer that only represents 20% of what they do? Hey, you have to go here because there's shootings here, there's break-and-enters here. I want to reimagine that using technology. Do you know here there's a food security issue in this part of our community? Why don't we find the best upstream social resource to go with you into these communities and address the underlying issue so we don't get called for a break and enter. We don't get called for a violent crime. And I want to use the data through implementation of good technology to be able to analyze that risk data and provide that not only to our frontline officers, but to the community.
We're really looking to be trailblazers more than just following what's traditional. Using VMware and Workspace ONE, it's about layering on apps that are going to make our officers more effective and efficient on the front line and bring information to the officer's fingertips. They really want to be part of this transformation. Again, in our personal lives, we've had smartphones for years, and personally, I can't live without one. My calendar is in there, everything is in there. Now we've enabled the officers to do that for themselves. With that, we have an increase of demand asking for new and additional functionality to help their day-to-day life.
High tech equals high touch for me. It's really using technology to have more authentic interactions with the community. We know that when we can share appropriate information, we have partners in the community that want to help us serve them better. And everything that we do, it has to tie into a healthier and safe community. If that is one day getting rid of those big tough books in the car and having the mobile device run that 8-inch screen that comes with every car so that we are more cost effective in the technologies we use, if that is providing the community access to information using our new BI software, data and analytics to shape how they want police interaction to occur, that's what we're aiming for.
So that was a video that we produced with VMware, who's one of our partners working on our mobility program. It does a very good job of encapsulating kind of what our business objectives were and kind of where we are with that program. So with that, I'm just going to jump into, again, some of these slides might be familiar, but revisiting the fact that there's really three pillars for us. It's our technology strategy, our digital transformation, and our technology projects. And what I want to do just for a second is really drill down onto what does digital transformation mean. It's a very fancy phrase. Digital transformation is the integration of digital technology into all areas of your business, fundamentally changing how you operate and deliver value to customers. So if we look at what we've done with, just to use one example, the mobile phones, we have created a substantially new way of interacting with our members, which then translates to the way they can interact with our community. It makes them reachable, and it gives them access to information that they didn't have before. So successful digital transformation is achieved when the technology is laser focused on your core business objectives. So as an IT department previously, we had been trying to be everything to everyone, and we were falling flat. We were not able to deliver on all the objectives. With now this increased focus on our business outcomes, we're able to be much more effective and efficient and actually move the needle forward and help to transform our business. Next slide, please. So this slide addresses really two different thoughts. So one of the things that we're doing fundamentally as an organization is being much more thoughtful in the technologies that we choose. So formerly, technology in policing was a patchwork of disparate systems that we would string together and make them operate. So we would have to create fancy, to use computing words, interfaces between them, data would be exchanged. And ultimately, when you use shoestring and bubblegum to put these systems together to tie in all these disparate systems, it creates challenges for IT to support, but also it creates friction for the user experience. Why do I have to type this in here and why doesn't it roll over into here? So part of our vision has been over the last 18 months to select platforms and move forward. So buying a system that does a number of different things so that they are all tightly integrated into one. So again, from a user perspective, I have one app that I interact with instead of four. The other part of this is the community-centric approach, making sure that the technologies that we actually deliver are meeting the objectives of the business, which is the support of the community. So if we look at things like body-worn cameras, that helps to bring an elevated level of transparency on the actions of the police service and what we're doing so that we can show that we are behaving accordingly. Or in the cases where unfortunately we may not be, the appropriate actions can be taken. It gives that high level of transparency. If we talk about on the body-worn cameras, that it's not just about recording the interactions. Potentially, then there's additional things that we can do from that. We can learn training scenarios, all these different types of things. Next slide, please. So again, on my continue on the theme of that we have to engage our community, we've made significant inroads into making community a part of our technology. So if we look at the integrations between PO Police and the Ontario Human Rights Commission, if we look at the interactions, community engagement, engaging the Privacy Commissioner, And we engage them quite regularly now with projects that have that type of component, with body-worn cameras, with closed-circuit cameras. We're integrating with them to make sure that we're getting it right from the get-go. Rather than being reactive, we're going to be proactive and build in privacy by design and build in all these safe works. Making sure that we have our crowns involved in part of this as well, because the downstream effect of what we do ultimately ends up in the judiciary. And make sure that we have a lot of internal engagement, bring in our internal stakeholders on board, making sure that our members understand the purposes of why we're doing these things and the business objectives that we're trying to achieve. And by doing that stakeholder engagement in the beginning, we get much more buy-in and we have much more successful projects. And I've been in IT for quite a long time, and a lot of the time technology projects fail, not because necessarily the technology was bad, but the adoption is bad or people resisted it. So it's really people, process, and technology working together that make things successful. And by engaging people early, you tend to drive up your success rate on the back end of that. So next slide, please. So this ties in, again, very closely with what we as an agency are trying to do with the Ontario Human Rights Commission and the 7 principles. So of these 7 principles, many of them tie into technology in some way. For example, the capture of race-based data. Today, we don't have the facilities to do that type of stuff, so we cannot measure ourselves. And technology will play a part in that. In all of our touch points with our community, we need to collect that information so then we can do the proper analytics of the data on the back end. Which leads me to another layer of technology that we use, our analytical software, how we're analyzing it. And using that data to potentially develop early warning mechanisms for people who we've heard very clearly in domestic violence. If we can early intervene into some of these things, we can really prevent some terrible tragedies. Again, that's a factor of technology and using the data and analyzing it properly. If we can identify persons or communities that might be over-policed, that's something, again, that we need to look at. Identifying geographic areas that might be over-policed. It may be a socioeconomic issue or something like that. And again, tailoring the solutions to what our business objectives. So in order to meet this, there's no doubt that technology has to play a big role in this. Next slide, please. So to phrase it another way, all of our actions as a service will be informed and underpinned by the principles of the Ontario Human Rights Project. At the center, you can see the 7 principles there in this diagram. And it's critical that the policy, processes, and appropriate training support transparent and bias-free policing. This is where we're trying to go. These are our aspirational goals. And the technology has to support this, which means, again, as I mentioned before, integrating people early on, getting people to buy in, getting people to understand what the objectives that we're trying to achieve. And then if we look on the outside, there are a number of underpinning technologies. So if I'm just going to zoom in on a few of them, with, for example, our computer-aided dispatch replacement, which will facilitate things like the collection of race-based data. Body cameras, again, has some data points in it that we could potentially use. And then one of the key things on the, and with next generation 911, we are getting to the point of where we will be receiving rich data to a 911 call center. It might be calls, text, tweets, emails, live streams. All of that stuff will have additional data, and we have to have appropriate stewardship over that and make sure that we're serving our customers, but at the same time still living to the tenets of the OHRC recommendations. So with these, it's critical that we have responsible data use in order to assure, again, the bias-free policing. It's with the responsible implementation of technology, and I just want to underscore that, responsible implementation of technology, that these systems can bring forward meaningful change. An analogy that I often use is a tool is as good as how it's wielded. So for example, data is a great thing, and on its own, it's not evil in itself, much like a kitchen knife. It's great for preparing meals, but can also be used to harm others. We have to be very careful that the tools that we have, like data, are being used in a very responsible and transparent manner so that they're not causing undue harm and undue consequences, unintended consequences in our community. Next slide, please. So Mayor Crombie had commissioned this report by Upsurgents by the Black Caucus engagement session, and I really want to focus in on one of the specific actions from this, and that's action 7.5, which is to lead the residents of Mississauga in an inclusive exploration of AI technologies within policing. Further, with a community-driven statement of principle regarding AI and predictive policing, how we can protect our civilian populations and supports civilian trust, and empower officers to be able to do their work. So again, this is another one of those items that's going to underpin where we are and having the responsible use of technology. I don't think I need to speak to some of the misuses of technology that have been happening globally to repress citizens and used in improper ways. So it's very important that we, again, get these very powerful tools and use them in very effective, but transparent and fair and bias-free ways. So we are starting an internal committee to ensure that AI technology is not harmful to the community. The committee members will be obviously Chief Nish, Deputy O'Doherty, and myself will be on this committee. And we are going to work with our software providers to make sure that AI products are designed with this community collaboration to make sure that we do no harm, right? We have to get to it at the source rather than accepting products once they're done. It's very hard to change something after the fact. Much like if we're doing a home renovation, you don't want to change your plans in the last stage. You want to make the changes early so they can be effective and efficient. And I also should mention that I understand Deputy Medeiros is also, Deputy Mayor Medeiros has also expressed support for this recommendation, and we're looking to implement this throughout the region. So next slide, please. So now what I'm actually going to do is kind of a quick overview of what we have done as an agency over the last 12 or 18 months, and just some high-level deliverables that we've delivered. So if I can have the next slide, please. So on the extreme left, we're showing the phones, and that's at this point, we're a year into the phones. We've deployed 2,700 mobile devices to all of our officers and a number of civilian members. So that's been a key accomplishment. And I think when I've spoken to the board last, I was very clear on the delivery of the phone is not end of job. That's really the beginning of job. That's the platform to help enable us do other things. And if we look at the next picture on this is the body-worn cameras. Again, very tight tie into our mobile technology. On our last slide there, on our last picture there on the right, there's a picture of, that's our current in-vehicle technology solution that the officers use. Again, it's a different form of mobile technology, but again, what we've done in the past year is we've replaced all the equipment. The equipment in the vehicles was 8 years old. We've replaced it with modern technology, and with that replacement, we will be implementing additional features and functionality that the officers don't have today. And lastly, on the bottom of the screen is our preparation for the new dispatch system that we'll be implementing this year. With the most of the development work is done. We're staging it very thoughtfully to avoid summer months when people are off. We don't want to, again, make these big changes when people aren't around. We want to make sure that we get and engage the heart and minds up front. So this is something that will be coming very shortly. Next slide, please. So again, just some of the other apps, speaking back to the phone is the beginning. So we've also delivered on the left something called the Chalmers app, which connects officers with community resources on behalf of members. So an officer can go in here, and if they're dealing with somebody who's got food insecurity or housing insecurity, you can go in there and literally type, "I need a hot meal," and it will geographically look around the area, look for the resources that are available, and offer you some solutions. It might offer you a food bank, it might offer you somewhere to go get a hot meal, but all of these things that then we can give to the person who's in crisis. Again, using all the technology in the phone that's there. In the center, we have something, a query tool that we have, which allows us to query, the officers, to query our records databases from their smartphone. Typically, this is the type of thing that tethered an officer to a vehicle. So now they can be inside an apartment, in a home, they can be in a park, and now have this ability to query. What's especially important about this is, while every officer who was in a marked police vehicle had technology, if you were a bicycle officer, a foot patrol officer, you literally had no other technology than your portable radio. So now this kind of levels the playing field that they're not at a disadvantage. They do have this very similar capability to what's available in the vehicle. On the right is a support site that we created. Again, knowing that we've deployed all this technology and the officers are going to need assistance, we've got a support site for them so they can go and navigate. Do they need help with mobility or their body-worn cameras? Next slide. And of special interest is something that we've created on the left-hand side, which is a collection of videos. And I'm afraid I don't know exactly how many videos, but they have the standard cautions that officers would give to people that they're dealing with in many different languages. So for example, if I'm arresting somebody and English isn't their first language and they speak, in this case, Urdu, I could find the right to counsel and play them the video in Urdu so they can understand their rights to counsel. So this is something that we've done so that it's always consistent, it's always uniform, it's defensible, and we can make sure that people are understanding these things in their native tongue. And that, again, that goes from breadth to demand. There's a large number of standard police statements that are in here and a collection of languages. Now, I should also say the languages were also chosen based on the demographics of the region of Peel. So they tie into the languages that our officers are most likely to reach within the region. In the center, and again, on the spirit of communication, we're right now very close to deploying this app called Voice. And what this does is allows the connection of an officer directly to a call center with somebody who is a live translator. So while on the right, we have on the left, we have very good a facility for things that for known interactions. If I know what I'm going to say, if I'm connecting with a victim and I don't know what they're trying to tell me, I can now very quickly connect with somebody with their language, and we can have an interactive, like a FaceTime call between the officer and the witness and somebody who speaks their language, and now we can get to them. Which today, before this, the process was with phone communications, trying to find if there's an officer who has that language, try to send that officer there if there's an officer available. There was a call out process where we do have a third party agency that we could call and do this. But now officers can do this literally at a touch of a button. And in the back end, the software knows where it's coming from. It'll get billed to Peel Police. And right there on the spot, they say within 90 seconds, you will get a live real-time person translator to help with those interactions. And I think the applications for this are limitless. We can think about community engagement. Not all of our involvements with people are negative. So if we can have positive engagements with people who don't speak English, and this can be a fantastic way of doing that. And then lastly, here on the right, this is the Peel Police Wellness app. So something that we have developed for our members to help with the mental addiction structures. And you can see right on there, and I think it's a very important button, that I've had a tough call. And this will connect them with resources to help themselves when they've had a bad shift or a bad call. Again, in underpinning our members and their well-being. Next slide, please. So one of the things that's we've been working on for quite a while is the public safety broadband network. And just at a high level, what that is, that's a private cellular network that Peel, in combination with Halton Police, have built and is currently operative. It's been quite the labor of love over about 3 or 4 years, and I've only come into it in the last year and a half or so. But we finally hit a few major milestones where the Public Safety Canada's temporary national coordination office has endorsed the model, the operating model that we've put together for this, and it's getting support. And the carriers now are coming alongside with us and are negotiating us with roaming agreements, so that should our officers roam outside of our region to a different network, they will still be able to connect to our assets. So, and just really quickly from Public Safety Canada, an interoperable nationwide PSBN in Canada will allow public safety to leverage technology, keeping Canadians safe in times of need. And it'll provide the mechanisms to ensure the public safety community has the ability to work together in protecting Canadians. So you may be asking, what's the impact of this, and why is this important to us? So if we think about recent events or events that have occurred, for example, the Raptors Parade in downtown Toronto, where there's 1 million people, well, the cellular networks just can't keep up with that. Even more locally, at the Culture Day Parade here in Brampton, not as many people, but the same challenge. There's too much capacity on those networks. So what that means is there's an opportunity cost to us as police. We cannot get through. We cannot communicate. We cannot coordinate and schedule. We can't get help for people. We can't help people. So these are the types of things that that this type of network will support. And additionally on this, on the next generation 911, Deputy Chief Duarte is the chair of the OACP 911 Interagency Advisory Panel. So it's something that we as an agency are taking the lead on, again, with the deputy's role. But in addition to that, we've already selected an NG 911 provider, and we will be starting that implementation soon. We will be on the early edge of that implementation curve with our NG 911. And just there in the bottom right-hand corner kind of simulates what we might see. And again, the world is, as it's coming, we don't yet know what it's going to be, FaceTime to 911 or text to 911. This typifies something that might actually happen. And we are actually doing this for the deaf and hard of hearing community today, where it's an interactive text to the 911 center. So just to give an idea, as soon as you open that door to that, it's the attachment of pictures or videos and all these different things that will be coming in. So these are two very significant things that we've done. I should also mention on the PSBN file that I'm actually traveling to Vienna in June, and we've been nominated for 2 different awards. by the International Critical Communications Award body. And we're up for 2 awards, and in one of the 2 categories, we're actually down to 1 and 1 other person. So it's a 50-50 whether we'll be successful. And the categories are the government authority collaboration and us working with Halton Police and also working with the province to get the model adopted in Public Safety Canada. And the second award that we're up for is the Outstanding Contribution to Critical Communications. Again, this is something that's available south of the border. They call it FirstNet. They have this private network. It's a pseudo-private network. We're actually building the Cadillac of networks. It's even will be better than their model because it would be totally private and totally run by us. Yeah, so those are just some of those enhancements that we've made in that regard. Next slide, please. Next slide. So very quickly, sorry, next slide, please. So very quickly, I'm just going to give a quick fly through some of the things that we've worked on. So this is the roadmap that we had put together for us by PricewaterhouseCoopers. This was our technology and innovation roadmap. And as you can see at this point, there's a lot of check marks. So those check marks are either substantially complete or complete. So these are items that we actually have been able to deliver because we now have those laser focus on these different priorities. There are a number of there with the airplanes. Those are the ones that are in flight or are going to be coming very soon. So I just want to tie to one thing in that we speak a lot about these things in terms of projects. With absolutely they're a project. They have a definite start and a definite end date. Absolutely fit the need of a project. But we have to look at it from the perspective of a life cycle. So if I take one of the objectives on here, like NG911, we are well on our way in that. But once that project is done, our work isn't finished. There's the greenhousing of that, the evergreening of that. We'll have to care and feed it every number of years. We'll have to upgrade it. We'll have to change as the standard changes. So there's really a lot of effort that goes in after the project is done to maintain and operate and keep these things evergreen. So same thing goes for body cameras. Like body cameras have a finite life of around 4 to 5 years. At the end of that, we've got replaced that. So for every successful technology implementation, we have, and the term that we kind of use is technical debt. We know that if we implement System X today, in 4 years, we're going to have to do some work on that. We've taken that on. So there's a real correlation between the number of projects and the number of technology that we deliver and how much more additional work that'll be for the life of that specific item. So we talk, about continuous service improvement, making sure that, again, 911 will evolve, body-worn cameras will evolve. Are we going to get to license plate recognition? That will evolve, all these different things. If we look at one of the deliverables on here, which is risk dashboards and community portals. Well, again, once you implement a dashboarding tool, again, that much like smartphones, that's just the very beginning. Then it's the art of what's possible of what dashboards can you drive from this? What knowledge can we get from this? What actions can we take on this to support our business objectives? So it's really only the tip of the iceberg. There's a lot more effort that goes in after the fact to make sure that we're driving the value out of these technology enhancements. So yeah, just really quickly on kind of what's, I shall talk quickly on a couple of things that we're working on right now. So with that public safety broadband network, we are undertaking the replacement of the vehicle modems. And what a modem does is it connects a computer to a cellular network. We'll be upgrading all of those this year to make sure that we're able to use our private network. We are also, as an agency, we're going to be building 3 new buildings within 7 years. Very significant technological impact on that to wire the buildings, prepare the buildings, make sure they're modern and they're sustainable for when we go forward. And just really quickly on the ongoing support and maintenance, just roughly, body-worn cameras replaced every about 5 years, desktops and laptops every about 4 years, smartphones every 3 years. So these, again, this ties into the evergreening and what it takes to keep the program running. Next slide, please. So very quickly, I'm just going to talk about some of the things that we have for the year ahead. If I can just have the next slide. So we have already implemented a tremendous amount of organizational change in technology and capabilities. And as part of the WC roadmap, we had taken a real grassroots approach to delivering the technologies that the officers need, the things that are going to make their lives easier. So our analysis, based on their requests, there are really 2 significant things that we could implement that will, between them, deliver 17 net new additional capabilities for officers. So in our next 2 years, in our next year, the two objectives that we'll be working on is implementation of Office 365. And this will give officers capability to access their files on their smartphones when they're away from the office. It will give them, and again, this seems like such a small thing, but critically important and rated very high by our members, the ability to see each other's schedules and calendars, to see who's in court, to see who's on vacation, who's on course. Critically important for them at the platoon levels, very high ask. And once we implement this, something really simple to do. The other thing is increasing the ability for CAD capability. So today, dispatch is restricted, electronic dispatch is restricted to vehicles. Now with smartphones, we have the art of the capable. Now we can start dispatching people who are on foot and have the ability to add to their call and see maps and do all these other kinds of interactive things, which will help them deliver their policing services. So these two things alone, we think are going to be tremendously, well, the numbers show it. It'll deliver 17 net new capabilities directly to frontline officers. We're giving them what they want to make their jobs more efficient and effective. Next slide, please. So one of the things, again, about longevity and the ongoing operating is with all this increase of technology, it has an impact. Not everything works perfectly all the time. I have to, reboot my home computer. Sometimes my VCR is flashing 12 o'clock, but dating myself. We have to take and maintain these things. So again, over the last year, 1,200 body-worn cameras, 380 vehicles on the street, 2,700 smartphones deployed. We have over 3,000 desktops and laptops we have to manage and maintain. So what we have done is we've expanded our service desk, which formerly was open 6 a.m. to 8 p.m. 5 days a week. We are now running at 6 a.m. to 8 p.m. 7 days a week, including statutory holidays. So we are now finally, from an IT service perspective, open 365 days a year to help officers. And I often get the question, well, what happened before? Well, if something happened on a Friday night, the officer would suck it up until Monday. So we actually have no conclusive way of saying how much lost productivity might have been had over that time because something wasn't working for the officer. So that's sort of the known unknown. We don't know how to measure that. But what we can say is since we've done this since the first 3 months, we've answered 650 calls on the weekend from officers. So these are 650 officers who would not have had their problem solved otherwise. We've created more tickets. And what a ticket is a request for action. So in addition to our members now being available on weekends, our IT members, they're doing proactive work as well in the hours where the phones aren't ringing. So they're able to drive us forward. A callback is when we have to call an IT person from home and have them fix something remotely, and they get paid 3 or 4 hours paid depending on the time of day and whatnot. So we've been able to cut that expense down by 1/3. So we've had a lot less of those instances. That's resulted in about 100 hours of pay saved. And we've done this all with no additional FTE headcount. We were given the hours that we needed to support. Part-timers actually made the most sense. So we brought in part-timers. So no additional and ongoing commitment to that. Again, no permanent FTEs assigned. But a huge benefit for officers where formerly they were making do. We are actually hoping to expand this even more, and there will be additional requests going forth in the budget to actually expand the service desk from 5 a.m. to midnight, which will then make sure that we have sufficient coverage to cover the beginning of every shift when every officer comes in. So at the start of their shift, if they're having a technology problem, we'll be able to resolve it, and they will be able to continue on their way and finish their duties. Slide, please. Next slide. So very quickly, I want to talk about, and I had spoken about at the previous in-camera meeting about cybersecurity and where we are as an organization from cybersecurity. So Peel Police is obviously very high profile target, a high value target, and much like most other police services are. And while this is something that's happening overseas, the conflict in Russia and the Ukraine, this is kind of butterfly effect. So something that's happening thousands of miles away does have impact on us, even though we're a municipal policing service. So immediately after the conflict, Russian source cyber attacks over the first 48 hours increased by over 800%. So this is very much where the internet is a public and open thing, and it doesn't matter that we're an ocean apart from Europe. They're able to attack to attack us and potentially bring us harm. So it's very important to understand that it's not a local problem because the internet is global. The threats are global, and things that happen on the world stage do have an impact on us. Next slide, please. So this is something that happened, if you cast your mind back to November 2021, it was actually very big in the papers. This was a super high level vulnerability that was uncovered. and it scores a 10 out of 10, which is very, very rare even for IT people. Only 4.4% of these have ever been worse out of about 15,000 annually. And what's really important about this is we were affected. We had some pieces of code and some machines that ran this type of software, this Apache software, and we had to run and fix it. And this does a very good job of explaining what does the threat landscape look like and how fast do we need to act to be protected against this. So within the first 24 hours of this being released, there were over 200,000 hacking attempts on people who are running the software. And within 72 hours, it was 800,000. So these, again, are things, butterfly effect, they happen globally, and people are out there trying to bring harm to other entities. And again, being a high-value target, this is the type of case where this happens, we have to drop everything that we're doing, and we have to remediate these things. We have to make sure that we're cyber secure. Next slide, please. This slide really demonstrates the methodology of how we keep PO Police safe. And this is nothing new. This goes back to medieval times, the castle. And as we can see, it's a layered defense. There's a moat, there's gates, there's the outer belly, the inner belly, the towers. All of these things represent different levels of defense for an object. In our specific case, these are all electronic defenses. So we would have an outer gate, which might be a firewall, and then we have different filtering solutions and logging solutions that capture and aggregate all the activities. And then way deep down in the back is where we put our most sensitive data behind the most number of layers. So this slide, I'm struggling a little bit because I don't want to speak too much about the technologies that we use to protect ourselves, because that in itself ends up becoming a threat. But I can say that we have numerous technologies in all of these different ways that are adding to our layered defense, which helps us repel and detect cyber threats when they're available. So from that perspective, I want to give confidence to the board of we are continuing to make key investments. And right after that incident in November, in early February, from our lessons learned from that, we purchased another technology to help us deal with those random and vulnerabilities that come up. It's actually called a vulnerability management solution. So it helps us pinpoint all the solutions that are vulnerable so that we can very quickly then remediate them. So something that literally took us hundreds of hours in November, we had another one in February, and it took us only a couple of days to remediate. So again, something that brings us a tremendous amount of efficiency. Next slide, please. And subject to any questions, that's my presentation today.
Very interesting information. Thank you for the presentation. We have Ms. Coley speak.
Thank you, Chair. First of all, I want to recognize all the hard work that's going on, because I think we know if we're not innovating, we're going to be left behind. And I think the fact that you've shown technology and the right investment into this strategy and kind of the digital transformation you guys are doing is definitely very timely. It's showing in terms of how you're responding and how much of a difference it's making. We know an integrated platform is so critical, because you can have wonderful systems in place, but if they're not talking to each other, it doesn't really make a difference. So I do want to recognize that. And I'm so happy for the last section that you put up, because it was my number one question was security, because I went, there's a lot of data and what's happening. And we know that they're getting much more sophisticated. They have figured out how to get behind APIs. There's just so much happening. So that last slide was probably the one that was most comforting to see, that you have so many systems in place, and more importantly, that you're responding much faster, because I think that's all it is at this point, is figuring out how quickly we respond to prevent ourselves not being able to have access to information. So congratulations on all the hard work that has gone on. I know I've seen some of the other presentations. This is fantastic. I do hope, as we look at a 2.1 version of this platform, as it keeps growing, that we are looking at a base that allows integration, so that you're not restarting each step, because that does happen a lot. We see all this money spent, and then all of a sudden it's, oh, we need to put in a brand new system. I know that I've seen some of that coming forward, and I'm hoping that that continues, that we're looking to keep building into it and not restarting from scratch. But really, this is a great presentation put in layman's terms, so thank you for that. And it's really timely work that definitely needs to happen. So. And more importantly, what I love seeing was the fact that the frontline officers are able to access information that isn't necessarily something they can solve in the process, but now they're able to get the right resource in place to solve that. And so we're still responding to the individual at the front with what they need at the moment. So this is really great work, and we hope to keep seeing more of these updates. This was fantastic.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Coley. I have, yes, I'll go to Mayor Crombie, and then Chief wants to speak on it.
Thank you. And thank you. This was excellent. I think one of the key reasons we brought on the new team with Chief Nish and his deputies is the fact that he was going to modernize our IT and bring us into the new stage of innovation. And we're very grateful for the work you guys are doing. And it's not inexpensive. We recognize that as a board, but we're delighted that you're up on it and that it will help us help our solvency rates and improve our efficiencies. So that it's terrific. So appreciate it all. Very well done, as always. And the issue of cybersecurity always interests me. And I sit on, well, obviously at the city and on Electra, as utilities are also targeted and cities are targeted. And certainly as police force, we're all targeted as well. But very interesting to see that after the aggression, the Russian aggression into Ukraine that caused so much chaos, an increase of 800% of attacks from Russia. Let's call it where it is. Russian suspected sources. How's that? Was that to create terror or chaos, or just we were vulnerable at the time, or what do you think that was about?
So it's hard to speculate as to the why, but certainly it was something that, again, I want to be clear. It's not that we, Peel Police, necessarily received 800%, but globally there was an 800% increase in the activity. Of course, we were definitely targeted as part of that as well.
Yeah, no, I understood. I just guess create instability abroad. People are distracted and cause chaos. Just shocking. Anyways, I want to thank you for the update and well done. And we'll continue to support all modernization efforts with respect to IT and AI. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Crombie. Chief, you would like to add some?
Thank you through the chair, and thank you to the board members for your interest in Tony's presentation. And Tony, I just want to thank you and your team for the leadership in this space. We clearly want to make sure that we actualize on that aspirational vision. We've talked about many aspects of it being innovative, inclusive, and progressive. I think for the board's interest, every application that Tony has walked through has had a direct impact on the safety and security of the community, the abilities of our officers to actually improve that space. And none of it stops with just making our environment nicer. It actually has a direct correlation to improving community safety and well-being. And thank you for ensuring that that vision has been actualized, Tony. And we look forward to putting ourselves out ahead amongst many other municipalities and organizations. That's clearly why we're being recognized internationally in so many different regards. So thank you, Tony, and to the team and to Deputy Eduardo, who's not here.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you. If no further comment or question, I would like to have a mover to receive the presentation by Mr. Button, second by Ms. Coley. All in favor? This is carried unanimously. Thanks again for your wonderful presentation. We will now move on to the new business and item number 4, 2021 Annual Performance Report. Chief, would you like to speak to this report?
Yes, thank you. And through the chair, of course, as you know, I have Director Rob Maroney and Sheila Doyle, who's our Manager of Corporate Planning and Research, reporting through Acting Deputy Raymore, available for any questions. This is, as you know, part of our requirements under the Act to provide a public report. The report is, as appropriately has been shifted. And if you look on the website through the link, for those who've had an opportunity to see it, it has your strategic plan reported on under our work, our people, and our community. And it also has statistical numbers. And maybe I'll put you on the spot just to highlight anything that you'd like to. But I would just like to actualize as there's a remarkable amount of work in each point. And the Chair Inika, Mayor Crombie, Acting Deputy Mayor Medeiros will know that I present in July to Regional Council. And it's typically purported as the annual report, but we've shifted to talking about, hey, what's happening here in Peel? And so we really wanted this annual report to also shift with that. But within it are a couple of highlights, and because this is going on YouTube and we need to actualize on it, is that from a statistical standpoint, there's really good data in there that is worth peeling back, and we want to continue to highlight that. A couple of the stats is our weighted clearance rate here in Peel region, which is the ability for our officers to resolve and prosecute something, continue to be one of the highest. It's well above the national and provincial average, which is, and it, as you can see, year over year is increasing. In addition to that is the crime severity index, which talks about our violent crime. We continue to see that there is a reduction, at least in the last couple of years, but we are again well below the provincial and national average. Which here in Peel, we continue to use the branding that we are the safest large urban population over 1 million. I don't know if you can find a more succinct way to say that in Canada, and it's something for us to acknowledge. But behind it is all the work in it. So, Heather or Rob, and maybe just open up to you for any highlights or comments.
Thank you, Chief. One thing I would like to do is recognize the team. So Sheila Doyle, the Manager of Corporate Planning and Research, led by Bonnie Slowinski and the analysts, as well as corporate communications, who are responsible for the design, led by Carolyn Dixon, Francis Rosario, Nadine Fletcher, and the videographers. So I know either Rob or perhaps Sheila could provide some of those highlights. Sheila had something prepared, but it will be quick highlights.
Sure.
Yeah, good morning. I'm just going to pass it over to Sheila. Thank you. It's really a report card on the strategic plan, and I know we moved away from a PDF version to online, primarily from an accessibility perspective. That was the goal, and it allows us to translate into multiple languages as well, being online. And I'll pass it over to Sheila. Thank you.
Thank you. And I'm not sure if all of you have had a chance to take a look yet, but we have provided the link in the memo. And so this is just a quick view of what it focuses on. And as a reminder that we designed the annual report to provide feedback on our progress towards meeting the goals and priorities of the strategic plan. So you can see here it's set up as our community, our people, and our work. And it will be very much a drop-down menu with information on each area. So that's really what I wanted to highlight to you, is that this will be many of the items that you've already heard about today: centralized IPV, the Chalmers app, the work that our people are doing are covered in this with a little bit more information and under each of these areas as well. So if I'm under our people, we'll have our performance indicators. I'll go back up just so you can see there's the groupings, and under each of these you'll find a bit more information. And if you'll remember, in our strategic plan, we have a number of performance indicators, and by clicking on one of these you will be able to read exactly what we've done at a high level in those areas. So normally we have provided a PDF version. As we said, we've moved online so that it's accessible, meeting AODA requirements, and that it's translatable. So 100 languages available through the website, and it's instantly translatable. If there's any questions or if there's any information you want gained from it, as well, as the chief was mentioning the numbers, we've got a by the numbers section where all the crime stats for the year. So I think we saw a little bit of an increase last year in some violent crime, a decrease in property crime. But that again, we've got the highlights, and there again, if you wanted to look at traffic management, you just click and control the mouse, and the information's there. So it will make it easier for people that come online to look for some information. It'll be searchable from that website, and they can find what they're wanting easier than flipping through the pages. So we're hoping it makes it more accessible, more readable by the community, and more user-friendly for more people can get access to it. Well, the PDF version was always available. It was harder to search. So if there's any questions?
Any questions, board member? Oh, thank you. I guess none. So any other comment, or chief, any other additional information? Okay, if no further comment by anyone, may I have a mover to receive the report by Nando Unica, and seconded by Mr. Boughton. All in favor? This is carried unanimously. And the next item we have the item number 5, body worn camera and digital evidence management system status report. Acting Deputy Chief Raymore, please proceed with your updates.
Thank you. And through the chair, the body worn camera implementation program is progressing. There's not a lot of change from last month. We're at 93% completion rate at this point in time. One thing I would like to mention, Deputy O'Doherty alluded to this at the last meeting, that one of our officers has received international recognition through the Axon Rise Officer Award. So that is for an officer for saving a life or showing exemplary performance. This officer, Judith Solomon, saved a life. So she responded to a call at a pharmacy, many 911 calls coming in saying there was an assault. She was the first officer to arrive, and at that point received further information that there was a stabbing. So knowing she had to act immediately, she entered the pharmacy, saw the victim immediately bleeding profusely from her neck. She directed a witness, some of the bystanders that were standing around, for first aid to put pressure on that. She then searched the pharmacy, located the culprit, arrested the culprit safely. And at that point in time, her backup was arriving. So she was able to turn over the culprit to that backup and then proceeded to do first aid on the victim. And throughout the entire time, she was calm. She has less than 2 years experience on the road. So she did an excellent, phenomenal job throughout the entire thing. So we are thankful to her that she did that and that she was awarded this recognition that she deserves. Thank you.
Thank you. Any question from the board or any comment? Seeing, hearing none, may I have a mover and seconder to receive the report. Report moved by Deputy Mayor Madera, seconded by Mayor Crombie. All in favor? This is carried unanimously. Okay, that was the last item. So this concludes the public portion of the Peel Police Services Board. We will adjourn for 5 minutes, then move in camera. Thank you.